This is around the same time, slightly before Kickstarter would have started, or maybe, around the same time. In fact, Kickstarter was the other idea. When we were, my friend from B School, Manik, and I, when we were thinking of, what to start, a crowdfunding platform was one idea, and a crowdsourced work platform was the other idea. And we decided to pick this one up.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to Bold Conscious Connections. My name is Raju Panjwani, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. So this channel is dedicated to exploring the journeys of visionary leaders, entrepreneurs, who really dare to follow their dreams, their passions, and create really impactful businesses. So if you're looking to become an entrepreneur or otherwise seeking inspiration to elevate your career, well, you're in the right place, my friend. Let me say, why do I do this? It's because, like you, I had a career over 25 years, and at some point, my desire to follow my own path just took over, and I quit my job about 20 years ago now. So on this channel, what I do is we delve into strategies, mindsets, stories behind the success of those that have done this before, like I have. So what I want you to do is hit the subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and join us on this exciting journey towards living boldly and consciously. Welcome to another episode of Bold Conscious Connections. I'm so delighted today to welcome Sitashwa Srivastava. Let's call him Sitash for short. He's a serial entrepreneur who I've known now for almost 10 years or so. He has a knack for building businesses that challenge the status quo. I mean, that's kind of what I walked away with once I got to know him. And from co-founding Jade Magnet, which was his last gig before this current one called Stockle. It was a crowdsourcing platform that became a Harvard Business School study. And that led to Stockle, which I think is being renamed. You'll talk about that, Sitash. And which is really reshaping cross-border finance. And he'll explain what that means. So from what I know about this young man, he's been consistently pushing boundaries. I mean, he lives in India, but the work he did when we first met was all about the cross-border stock selection process in the US. But all in all, he's here because he's an entrepreneur. So we're going to explore some bold decisions he made in his life, the moments of doubt that are inevitable in our journey as an entrepreneur, the relationships that have shaped him, the deeper motivations that are driving his journey. So anyway, I don't want to babble too much, but Sitash, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Raju. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure always to speak with you and speaking on this forum with you. I really look forward to it and really privileged and all. Thank you so much.
Well, stay till the end, guys, because they're going to be a rapid fire, which he kind of doesn't know about what the questions are, and it'll be fun to explore things that we didn't cover on some of the questions that I have for him. So, Sitash, you may have seen some of my episodes, but I always ask the question. We all identify with what we do in life, but who is Sitash?
Starting with the toughest question first. Well, I think I've also sort of been constantly trying to discover. So it's a process of discovery as far as I'm concerned. When I was little, early days in school, I had ambitions were mostly around finding, the right vocation, perhaps. I never dreamt of being a pilot or, the classic childhood dreams that a lot of people used to have in those days, especially. Didn't really want to build anything also initially. I think I was just getting by. So I was a happy-go-lucky, guy in the beginning when I was just sort of graduating from school in the, in the late 90s. Once I sort of got my first job, then all I wanted to do this was in India. I was studying in an engineering college in Kanpur in India. And all I wanted to do was get a job at TCS when I was in college, because I had seen people from TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, being positioned on site, as they used to call it, or probably they still call it that in the IT services space. Right. And they would live in the US, they would live in UK, and they would come back home and so on, right? Visit and stuff. And I sort of thought, hey, that's a great lifestyle. But I think towards the end of my first job, I did get hired, not in TCS, but a similar company called Pero Systems out of college. And I was at Pero for about a year and a half. I think by the time I hit about a year in Pero, I think I really started discovering myself. And what I discovered was just curiosity, that I just like to be curious. I see problems. Sometimes I want to solve them. Sometimes I feel that I'm probably well positioned or in a position to solve them. I find them exciting. And I think that's what the rest of my life has been. Just somebody who's curious, somebody who's looking for problems to solve as much as possible, but along the way, just being very chilled out as much as possible and not taking life too seriously, focusing on personal relationships, and so on.
For me, certainly you're all about personal relationships. So my first question was going to be about, the thrill of solving problems. Is that why you did you spent 15 years building businesses, and what keeps you going? So I guess sounds like it is the thrill of solving problems, the impact that you make, and something that's completely new, giving effect or expression to your curiosity. So if you had to pick one or two defining moments, I mean, I know you kind of touched on it very quickly when you were going to college and what made you jump into this journey. Is there a couple of stories that you can, or turning points you can talk about that shifted your perspective and perhaps changed the trajectory of what it would be?
I think the earliest days were when I first wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I
Hmm.
think I come from a family of academicians. Father retired as a professor of
So
engineering.
entrepreneurship was not a thing in the family, correct?
Yeah, not for generations. I mean, a few generations ago, we had one entrepreneur in the family, I'm told. But other than that, I had never seen entrepreneurship in my immediate family.
Hmm.
And I come from a family of academics, largely academics and bankers and a couple of doctors, etc.
Hmm.
So being in business, as they say, in the traditional sense, was not something that anybody would ever consider. And there was a time when I did start considering it, right? Like I said, about the second year of my first job was when I started thinking about it. This was around 2005, 2006 time frame. I fortunately got a lot of support from my family when I first thought about it, and it started exploring some avenues, started exploring some accelerators and incubators. I had a couple of ideas that I wanted to work on, one in particular which I wanted to sort of see if I could actually build something from it and stuff. I would have approached my parents with trepidation at that time that this is something that I want to do, and it'll obviously mean that a relatively stable job and everything that I had sort of thought of when I used to like TCS. So that's not going to happen. And my options were actually to go on site. I was going to be sent to the UK, and the other option was to quit and start something. Ultimately, I did not start anything at that time. I explored various options, and then parents basically said, "MBA kar lo." Right? If you're not finding anything meaningful, maybe you're not enjoying what you're doing. That's the other done thing that kids are doing these days in 2005, 6. You've done your engineering, maybe do an MBA. And I just couldn't convince myself to not do that and, quit altogether. I quit my job though, and I went for an MBA. And I believe whoever would have gone in my place to the UK would still be in the UK. Right? And I went, I did an MBA, and I again wanted to start something. Just did not want to sort of pick up a job again. Jobs were much more easy to come by when I was graduating by B school. There was a loan. You go to B school in India, or as an Indian, you go to B school, you typically end up with a debt. So the objective
Same
was that
here. It's
same
worse in the
same in
US.
the US. Yeah. Yes, it's worse in the US. So again, okay, work for a while to pay off the loan and then quit. But along the way, I think I could just constantly got a lot of support from family. And I think those were really the turning points, because becoming an entrepreneur is the tougher thing. Staying an entrepreneur, probably once you're in the mindset, I think at least personally, I feel going back is more difficult.
Going back
So
is
going back from being an entrepreneur, going back to say the corporate world, or going back to whatever you originally were doing before you became sort of independent, I think that's more difficult than
difficult.
staying an entrepreneur for a lot of people.
So, you touched on a cultural aspect there, Sitash, because I know that we're as in India and many other traditional societies. So tell me about the influence of parents and, why they drive these decisions. And is it because at 20 plus, whatever you are at the time, 25 or so, you don't have the capability or they don't trust you or they just think that they know better? Because it's a very big issue with many people that I interact with and who are reaching out to me and talking about these things.
I mean, I've been fortunate, to be very honest. Parents were always supportive. They never judged my decision for it being my decision. Right? I mean, they were always very independent minded as far as their kids were concerned, both me and my sister. And I feel that culturally, though, there obviously is a certain sense of risk that is associated with entrepreneurship
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to services oriented families.
Mm-hmm.
So people who grew up, in environments where their parents, their aunts and uncles
Sure.
were on paychecks,
Yeah.
monthly fixed paychecks, right? For them to break out of that mold is always difficult, because unless the parents see the world the same way or see you the same way as you see yourself, they don't like it, right? And
Yeah. That's true.
Fortunately, though, I do believe that in the last 20 odd years, there are enough parents who've sort of seen their kids the way their kids see themselves as well in India. So, we are in a good place entrepreneurship wise, world over, but also in India.
Okay, so I want to take you through the journey, but there's this one question that's bugging me. Is like, can you share a time when something went completely wrong?
So many times.
What that taught you about what it means to bounce back as a leader, founder. So yeah, if you can share one, maybe.
Yeah, I think well, the most recent, there have been many, many such occasions. There are simple things, as you well know, Raju. There are daily highs and lows in entrepreneurship. Right? Every other day, something nice happens and then you feel elated about it. And you got to sort of balance it out, mentally. There are all the rest of the moments are that you're constantly paranoid about something going wrong. If something is not going wrong, even then you are paranoid that you know what all can go wrong, right? So that sort of keeps you mentally occupied too. So while that happens on a daily basis, I think a few big things that one has to sort of bounce back from. I'm a technology entrepreneur. When you are in the tech startup space, there is a lot of dependence on how the rest of the world is doing. If there is a
Is that perceived
dependency
or is that
on
real?
some of it is real, some of it is real. It depends upon how you're building your business, to be very honest. I think if you have built dependencies, right? If you have chosen to build something which requires outside capital. And many large scale businesses do require outside capital for some time. As in when the environment changes, so you have to make do with whatever money you have. Right, and which means you sometimes have to cut your costs. You cut as many corners as you can. In my case, funding is one thing at borderless, and like you initially said, we are changing this to borderless from Stockwell to borderless. At borderless, we are also building a business in a very regulated space. So you're sort of at the mercy of multiple regulators when you are building a cross-border business, especially. That again is something that has often sort of affected the way we plan our own journeys. And in my case, there have been at least 2-3 occasions when there have been regulatory ups and downs, and you have to sort of have the reservoir of sort of in some ways ambition, but also stamina.
Hmm. Well, stamina is key. You can have the resources or you can get the money, but if you can't sustain your energy and your stamina, you're basically giving up.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel that stamina is probably the most important or among the top 1 or 2 traits, that are required to last, as an entrepreneur.
Okay, so in these moments of self-doubt and all these avalanche of sometimes things that are coming at you, I know you had a really a big one recently that we talked about offline. We don't have to discuss that, but yeah, that's pretty critical when you lose somebody or you find things about things that are going wrong within your organization while you're building with the business. So no matter how successful we are, and we have all got moments of doubt, right? Clearly. So is there a particular technique you use to bounce back on track?
Well, I think I look at the people around me, right? I take advice. I, again, very luckily constantly have had a lot of personal support. Whether the environment has enough money for your business or not, very sure that I will always have, people around me who will give me good advice, personal as well as professional. So on as in my personal life as well as when I'm trying to build something. So people, advisors and investors, existing investors at Borderless, of course, going back to my family. Those are that's really what keeps you going. On the professional side, I would take a lot of very practical advice, things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. How to approach and solve a problem. I rely on them. On the personal life side, of course, you just get the resilience from there, and you sometimes get a lot of ideas as well, to be very honest. But you really get the resilience and the stamina from them.
So
The sense of security is what you get basically from
exactly.
family, right?
That you always have that, and in other cases it's a paycheck support for monetarily, but otherwise without the energetic support that you need of your relationships and closed ones. So yeah, now we're hitting relationships and leadership aspects here. So who are the people that have shaped the way you lead, let's call it professionally, because we tend to separate these things in our minds, but we're one person as I see it. So, whether it's mentors, team members, tough critics, whatever, how have they influenced your journey?
I think there are many aspects of my professional journey where different leaders have
Mhm.
different influencers would have helped. In the very beginning, when we were just getting started, when we were still called Stockle, the initial ideas, I think the first angel investor that came into the business was Mohan Alexander.
Mhm.
Mohan founded Amba Research, which got acquired by Moody's. And so he had been in the equity research space. He'd built that business grounds up, bootstrapped for a very long time, and then raised some money, and then built it very sustainably, and then gone through an acquisition process which lasted a fairly long period of time. So he had obviously seen the world. And before that, he'd been with Deutsche Bank and many other, financial institutions. So his advice would always come with a lot. I always take, even today, I take a lot of his advice and with a lot of seriousness. It comes with a lot of practical experience. So I think a lot of, what we have become today is because Mohan really helped out. And my father-in-law, Dhruv Prakash, he was really very, very helpful in shaping the way Stockwell shaped up from a support perspective, from a leadership perspective as well. And only referring to people who've helped on the professional side here. And then, of course, I mean, Raju, you've influenced as well. We've spent a lot of time. You've thankfully given me a lot of time, especially in the early days of Stockwell before we switched to cross border. I think you had your role to play in that as well. More recently, I would say, I work with a lot of our current investors and take a lot of advice from them. So yeah, I mean, I've surrounded myself with well-wishers, fortunately, and that gives a great sense of professional security to what we are doing at Borderless. And I think that sort of keeps us honest with our ambitions, right? But more importantly, that also gives us the belief, the stamina that yeah, there's enough fuel to get to where we want to.
Surely. Well, I appreciate you. I wasn't talking about me at all, but hey, glad it would have had some role to play. But I'm 20 years now into this journey, and it's incredibly isolating. I actually did not listen. I had incredible mentors in the beginning that I brought on my board, and yet I wasn't listening to them because I was so full of ego and all. I can do this. Yeah, so it's been a huge unlearning for me and relearning and all of that journey, but it's it can be very isolating. So whoever's listening still, and who I focus on typically, Sitash, are people who are already have climbed the ladder. They want to now get off the ladder because they realize that they've lost their own connection with their own fulfillment or purpose or whatever people call it. And then when they're ready to start, that's what I step in and help in whatever way I can. So sometimes it's obviously it's coaching is one element, and then the other is sometimes capital or other advice and mentoring and so on and so forth. So yes, this journey can be very isolating, and it has been for me for a very long time. So how do you balance that drive to build, as we just talked about, the stamina, maybe the energy to build with, maintaining, meaningful relationships with people? Because that's really important.
Yeah, and it's not easy given everything that goes on,
The
the
busyness
ups and
and
downs and whatever, the busyness.
yeah,
It's not easy. And you kind of always go away with some sort of guilt as well, because you're always behind. In all your relationships, you're always behind in your mind at least, right? But you do try to find time. I think over time, what I've realized is that it's possible to make time. There are times when you will make less time on a day-to-day basis. Let's say, going back home on time, or being with my wife and my son. Simple things in life, but very, very, very important on a day-to-day basis, right?
that's right. Yeah.
At some point of time, you always sort of feel that, hey, you're not able to do enough, you're not able to spend enough time and stuff. But then once or twice, I have sort of tried to make conscious effort and failed. Then what I realized, and this is something a friend of mine told me, you also try to do qualitative time, if not quantity. If you can do quantity, great, right? You do quantity and quality together. In some ways, quantity is quality as well. Just
Mm-hmm.
being around helps. But if you are short on quantity, you make it up with quality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I'm trying to do more of now. I still don't think I do enough. you
Chuckling
know
because I have 4 kids and 5 grandkids, and I was like, oh wow, where's my quantity or quality? But anyway, so you just don't know, but you do the best you can, and that's the key.
you do the best you can, and you just at the end of the day thank them to accept what you are able to sort of contribute.
So we haven't touched on any of the businesses, what they do, what they are. I'm going to leave that to you because I tend to talk about the person behind businesses, what their journey has been and how it's shaped them. It almost doesn't matter what people do. But if you want to talk about what Borderless is today, I mean, is it a Stockwell or Borderless now a pivot from Jade Magnet? Is it similar? What was it about solving a bigger problem or desire to challenge yourself? I mean, was that what you were trying to do in the industry at the time?
It's very different from what Jade Magnet was doing. At Jade Magnet, we were building a gig work marketplace
Mm-hmm. Okay.
focused on creative work, focused on being your outsourced creative agency, basically, and your
Like a
marketing
Fiverr,
agency and
Upwork
stuff.
type of thing, or
Yeah, like a Fiverr, Fluff. There's Fiverr, there was 99 Designs. So a bunch of folks built various kinds of gig work companies. Fiverr is a good example, I would say. But sort of modify it to India, modify it, the nature of work and therefore the nature of engagement to Asia. Most of our work was in India, Singapore, and the Middle East. Some of it in the US, and therefore a lot of work over time was less Fiverr, less $5, bite-sized, more I would say slightly longish term, detailed, deeper work.
but project-based gig work, as you said.
Project-based gig work. We used to call it crowdsourcing. The reason it became a Harvard case study was because a very dear professor of mine at B school, he basically decided to write, a story on crowdsourcing in Asia, and we were at, in those days probably the number one, number two player, trying to talk about crowdsourcing and building space for
This
ourselves.
is beyond Kickstarter and all that back in the day, or are you talking?
This is around the same time, slightly before Kickstarter would have started, or maybe, around the same time. In fact, Kickstarter was the other idea. When we were, my friend from B School, Manik, and I, when we were thinking of, what to start, a crowdfunding platform was one idea, and a crowdsourced work platform was the other idea. And we decided to pick this one up. Then it became Jade Magnet and so on. So that was at in the early days of Stockle, we were trying to democratize intelligence platform, investing intelligence platform for US based retail investors. Right? So the fundamental thought though was still the same. Crowdsourcing at Jade Magnet was focused on crowdsourcing of creative ideas to help businesses build their campaigns. The element of crowdsourcing was there in the early days of Stockwell as well. We were trying to create alternate data sets, intelligence from social media, things like sentiment analysis, and analyzing unstructured data to create investing signals, which were all the bedrock of that was still the thought process that there is wisdom in the crowd.
Yes.
You have to create the ability to tap that wisdom, sort of, use it for your purpose. So the fundamental thought process, curiously, was very similar. But then the pivot to borderless, I think this is more democratization of access. So that was more democratization of ideas and intelligence. This is more democratization of access and ability, when it comes to money. So we stayed in the realm of money that we were sort of
So
building
for
at
those that
Stockwell.
are laymen trying to understand what you do, can you simplify in one sentence
Yes.
what Borderless does today?
Yeah, so borderless helps, businesses in countries like India, regions like Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa offer cross-border investing products to their customers. So, if I'm an Indian, I live in India, I want to invest in global markets, I can use the borderless platform offered to me by one of my wealth managers or brokers. If I'm in Indonesia and I want to send money to my child who's studying in the US, let's say, I can use Borderless Pay, which is the cross-border payments product that we have. If same thing, if I'm in Ghana or Nigeria, or if I'm in Qatar or Oman, and I want to deploy capital globally, because I can't, there's only so much I can deploy locally, then I'll have products and services which I can access on the Borderless platform.
So they're not limited to stocks and bonds. There could be anything else as well.
Yeah. We started with stocks and ETFs. Now we have fixed income products, we have hedge funds, we have multi-currency accounts, we have
Yeah.
payments,
You
all
can
kinds
access
of things.
mutual funds and so on and so forth in the US and whatever.
So yes,
So
yes.
it's so for those interested in that part, reach out. We'll put all the show notes as to. And I suppose you're still building your business, and you still be okay to get the word out about what Borderless does, right? I assume. Uh,
All the time. All the time. You
Good.
never stop talking. I would never stop talking about it.
That's great. All right. So before we get into some of the rapid fire stuff, I'm excited to talk about. How has your definition of success changed over these years? About 15 or 20 years that you've been in this journey, employment and then entrepreneurship?
Yeah, about 20 years, 20 years and then some. I think, like I said, initially it was very simple things. I mean, today I look at it as simple things. When I was about to graduate from college, I was just hoping that a TCS or an Infosys would offer me a job in the campus. Infosys salary, I believe in those days was 14,000 rupees a month. So they were offering like 1.8, 1.9 lakh rupees for the year CTC back in 2004. And I felt that's a lot of money. Finally, when I did get my first job with Hero Systems, I made more than that. It was, I think, 2.25 lakh, which is what, 225,000 rupees a year, basically. And that was quite enough in life. And that was the only sort of goal, other than, of course, the longer term plan that, you will go, quote unquote, on site. So either to the US or to the UK, or to a developed country or whatever, right? And that's what cool kids were doing. And so that was all, that success meant. One day I was sitting in an interaction with a gentleman who headed Fero Systems office, the office that we were in. It was in Noida, next to Delhi. Somebody said that, he earns 40 lakh rupees as salary.
That's 4 million
And
rupees.
4 million rupees as salary. And oh shit, that's like, I don't know whether I will ever be able to make that much money. Right. And also, so the other theme, therefore, is that was what I was thinking about, like how much salary can you make? Not thinking of wealth still, not thinking of money, not thinking of, sorry, thinking of money, not thinking of wealth, not thinking of, larger things in life and so on. And that was it. So success in that moment would have been the ability to earn, say, 40 lakh rupees, and that would have been enough. Then gradually, when the disenchantment with the corporate world started happening, I think success, the definition of success just changed to building something people like. Right? I think the early days of Jade Magnet were about that. What we are building, are there enough people who find this valuable? Are there, so of course, which would mean that are you acquiring enough customers, users, and so on? But are we building something that people genuinely like? And I think that definition has kind of broadly stayed, right? But over time, one also becomes a lot more practical, right? You say, okay, if this does not become a $10 million company, and then maybe $100 million company, and then maybe $1 billion company, if it doesn't become that, then you've not succeeded. So it obviously, just like you rightly asked, it changes over time. Today, I think it's more about, is it sustainable on its own? But along with being sustainable, can it get to a scale where, don't think of valuation, but can it get to, let's say, $5 billion in assets, or can it get to, $100 million in revenue in a time frame that I can, foresee, and which would therefore mean that enough people like it, right? If a lot of people say that, hey, I like it, but blah blah blah, right? Then I would still feel that they're just being nice to me.
So you still, it's funny, you revolve around the money, the valuation or not valuation, but whatever it may be, in terms of still dollars and cents. Is there any other element of success that you define, like any other ways besides money
I
or
mean,
some
being
measurable?
very honestly, being very practical here. But if I was to put it differently, I would probably think that at a very personal level, a few years down the line, if I get up in the morning and I don't have plans for the day, I would feel successful,
But
right?
the base of that will be money. Like you have the
Not
comfort.
necessarily
No,
you have the
I'm just
comfort
asking.
and
I'm
the
putting words in your mouth. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, the comfort does. I mean, money obviously is important, but it's not about, then you're not counting how much, right? There's only so much money one needs to be honestly comfortable, right? So money can't be a
You
personal
keep
driver.
kicking the can down. Okay, if 5 million, 10 million, if 5 billion, millions keep going, but then what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, yeah. So rather than thinking how much money will I make, right? I think in the initial days it was more that how much money will I make, how much salary, how much income, etc. Right? Over time, it stopped being how much money will I make from this, right? It became money is a marker, that is a practical marker for how big of a venture you've been able to create, right? So it doesn't matter how much money you will make in the process. You feel that you'll make enough money to be monetarily successful personally if you really get to where you want to get to in your venture. But yeah, I mean, that's how I would.
All right, I'm going to have a separate session with you. I'm going to seek some advice from you, okay? So, for people listening, and I'm sure people are just excited about what's possible for them, right? Someone starting out, figuring out, as I said, now they're in their 40s or something like that, in their jobs, or have had a few jobs over 20 years, trying to figure out their place in the world. What would you be one advice you would have them consider?
Find something that you are so passionate about that you can't think about anything else. It need not be. I mean, and I'm focusing here on people who you said are looking to start out, right?
Well, they're unfulfilled, right, at a core level, and they realize that suddenly now they're in these stages. They're becoming empty nesters, or They married one person. Now that person looks different because the kids are going away, right? So like, oh my God. Or parents are getting sick. These are all very much real things that happen to all of us, right? It's a cycle of life. But but not everybody goes through it, but that doesn't mean that I don't go through it, right? So in that sense. So it's still unique to each of us because our experience is unique. Like just when you have a baby born or you don't have a whatever. So you just things you haven't experienced, but you experience it, it's your experience. So in that sense, they're pondering, they're not afraid because obviously the biggest thing that people seem to worry more about is even though they're financially very well off because they're successful and climb the ladders, as I said. So what are they afraid of? It's just like, I won't have this lifestyle. I may not have the status anymore. My titles are going to be gone. And I step into a business, I think it's an extension of my job because I have all these skill sets. But then I can't leverage all those skill sets because I need some other skill sets to be an entrepreneur, right? You don't have your secretary, or in the old days, it used to be secretary. Now it's like, you don't need all that. But whatever it is you need, you won't have that. And you miss the business card that you had and the name. So there are all these trepidations, right? And then all of that, it falls within the security domain, whether it's a financial security or a loss of status, etc. So that's what they worry about. So what should they do besides come to me and I help them and hold them?
Yeah, I was going to say this should just come to you. It's not easy. I mean, I can empathize externally speaking. I mean, I've not been in that position, but I've had a lot of friends and acquaintances and people that I've seen who've made the switch as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those who are able to be honest, at some level, I also feel it's not that important to make the switch. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's fine, if you can become satisfied with what you are in
Not
and
everybody
focus on
needs to be an
personal life.
entrepreneur. Not everybody needs
Yeah,
to be an entrepreneur. Absolutely correct.
not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to not be an entrepreneur. It looks more sexy from the outside than it really is sometimes. So keeping that aside for a moment, I think you can't make that decision alone
Mm.
in that, at that age and in that space. It's tough to make that decision
Why, in your
alone. And
40s,
it's in
50s?
40s, 50s. Yeah.
You can't make that alone because you
You
have your.
probably, I mean, you are anyway on the edge, right? You're kind of thinking, should I make the leap or not, right? If you were independent and if you were able to do that, you would do it, right? But if you're finding it difficult, then I just feel that there are going to be more stakeholders in your personal life in most of these situations. And maybe the one thing is to not make that decision alone and you involve your family in it because it is going to be a ride for them as well. And you don't want them to think that you did it, and therefore you had less time, but you thought about it alone and you didn't take them along and so on, right? You will need their support. So I think if you decide to not make that decision alone, and then you sort of go back to your well-wishers and your family and stuff, and then you sit down, they will help you, get through some of these trepidations that you might have and the lack of security and so on. Because if you have their backing, then you will have a sense of security,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the business cards will come, right? You will build something, you start becoming successful, your brand will get out, and you will again have a card, which you can carry and the brand at the back.
Well, I wish you were around when I was launching my first startup 20 years ago.
I'm just reacting. I haven't been in that situation, but
Yeah.
I sort of
Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, that's for
thinking
sure.
about it.
However,
Yeah,
I always say the reason you're itchy and you are feeling disconnected is because that desire of whatever you want to build has also been placed inside of you by some bigger force. And you are responsible. In fact, you have a responsibility to express it. So now I don't know. I have
that's
16 different skills, unfortunately or fortunately, which keeps me very confused. But I express them to my full capability every single day. Not all 16, but I'm just saying. I'm just throwing out a number. But it could be 5
absolutely.
things that I'm good at, and I feel like the world needs some of that. So that's the expression that This is just me. But this notion that we're good at one thing to me is just total hogwash because I've experienced that that's not the case. Not for me anyway.
That's not the case for sure. That's not the case for sure.
All right. So before we get to rapid fire, is there anything you want to say about we're gonna put all the things in the show notes about where to find you and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're good. Let's do the rapid fire.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Is there like a
What's it?
buzzer or something?
Sorry. No, there's
There's
no
no
buzzer.
buzzer. I'm the only guy, so there's no buzzer.
That's okay. Well, it's rapid fire from my perspective, but you may answer it. You don't have to answer. There's not a one word answer. But you haven't had a chance to think about these things, unlike the pace of all these other questions. So we could go fast. Okay, what's a decision you made that completely changed the course of your career?
Quitting. My
Quitting?
job. Quitting
Quitting.
my
Yeah.
job.
Good. That's pertinent. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't take things too seriously.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, there was a time when, every little thing would worry you, and there was a time when, especially when things are not going well. I think, especially in the early days, we were finding it difficult to get the product off the ground, and finding money wasn't easy, and stuff. I think, again, one of our investors, advisors in the early days kind of said that it's if you hang around long enough and you're really not loafing around, but being, if you're serious about what you're doing, you will figure it out, right? So as long as you find the staying power, you don't have to take today very seriously. It'll be fine.
Okay, so that brings me to the next question. What's a failure in the common parlance failure that you laugh about now, but you couldn't back?
When we pivoted from a Stockle to borderless, the thinking from intelligence for investing intelligence to cross border, that 1 month of just the mental sort of churning that was happening in those days was very bad. And today, when I see that, I just feel that, hey, it was great that we pivoted out of it. That was not going the way I thought it would. And here, the opportunity, the canvas that we are sort of painting on is just so much larger. The impact that this will create is just so much more that I should have started this sooner.
Excellent. What's a book, a podcast, resource that completely switched or shifted your perspective?
I haven't, honestly, I don't read a lot. I
Hmm.
read now. I read for some time and then I give up reading. I watch movies though,
A podcast?
and podcasts, and been interesting for me is my general interest in creativity. I've always been a movie buff. English, Hindi, what comes my way. And I've always sort of liked the lighter side of the movies which are light. So I like to sort of experience them with friends and family, etc. also, and then analyze and discuss and so on as well. And I think they just sort of keep you stable, and like you said, there's not everybody has only one skill. If you will feel that you have a few more skills. And I've always sort of felt that if I start thinking of the creative process, be it anything, it could be playing an instrument, if it could be making a movie, it could be writing a story or whatever, I think I'll like the process if I'm in it. And
One person, sorry.
now that's basically it. I mean, it sort of keeps you thinking that, hey, there's more you can do with life.
Who's one person you admire the most and why?
That's a tough one. There's so many. I mean, there's so many, and for so many
Dead or
reasons.
alive? You can say dead or alive. The other question people ask is like, what if, who could you have a dinner with you just so you could talk to them, dead or alive? Who would that be? Same
Can
thing.
I talk about various people rather than one person? It's I'm a huge tennis fan. I like Roger Federer a lot. I wish I could. I still play. I like to play. And I think just the process, the longevity, the stamina, all those things relate back to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day-to-day, what we're trying to build here as well. So I think that's just, then I really look up to a lot of very creative people, composers, movie makers. If I was to look at, a few of them, the earliest of the folks, like the Mozarts of the world, yes, of course, right? But also a lot of comedians,
Mm-hmm.
George Carlin
Of course.
type of comedians who were less comedians, more philosophers. Really, really look up to the way they thought in those days, and the way they were able to just boldly express. Closer home, I would say people who built businesses on that side. There's many. It's tough to point out one, to be very
Yeah, of
honest.
course, of course.
More in personal life, just my wife. I mean, Sharply, just the way she deals with the empathy and the intelligence together. That's just
Beautiful.
amazing to see.
Now you have one child. He's a 10-year-old, right? It's a he.
Yes, his name is Abir.
You were telling me about his YouTube. Like, how many how many viewers does he have? Yeah, that's amazing. A 10-year-old kid. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, Beer has made like 300 videos, and just the momentum, just the ability to come up with ideas and just
Hmm,
just keep going.
that's right.
The world will see. I think that's something to learn from
Maybe he
as
can
well.
come do my content creation every day that I do.
So he would so enjoy working with you. He would so enjoy working with you.
So is there a ritual or a habit that you rely on to stay focused and calm? And because this podcast is bold and conscious. So bold, we've talked a lot about. You've been bold in your life. Consciousness, mindfulness, awareness.
I do play tennis, like I said, and that sort of really helps.
I see.
I like to stay fit. I mean, there have been, times in life where I felt really unfit. But for the last, especially the last 3, 4 years that I started playing again, I started playing for the first time when I was maybe 14 or something. I played state levels and so on, and then kept playing until I had to write my IIT entrance exams and stuff, and then gave up, and then went to college, and then started playing again for a year maybe. So here and there, I sort of intermittently played, but I've played dedicatedly for the last I would say 3 years. And if I miss it, I don't feel good. So that really, if that also distracts you, because there are days when you've played so badly in the morning that for the rest of the day, that's the only thing you worry about. All your daily problems in office are sidelined, because you're like, oh shit, tomorrow I got to
Beat that guy.
do this perhaps. Yeah, something that you were not doing well.
You sound like my oldest son, who's a good tennis player at his age, 43, and he's in his club, etc. But so he's among the top two, and yeah, his day is ruined if he just had a slightly difficult match. Okay,
Yeah, that
3 words
happens.
to describe your entrepreneurial journey, and we can end with that.
Sure. Certainly bold, coming from where I came from and where I have come from rather. Well, I would say fortunate in many ways as well, because you go from one thing to another. One thing leads to another. That's again a theme in life and in entrepreneurship, and especially in my journey. I've been very open to the idea of the fact that one thing leads to another. So you get into situations which give you the opportunity to sort of, you don't know where it'll go from. So that, and
So what's the word?
I
Bold?
think bold, I said fortunate, but now I'm thinking maybe that's not the right word, but
That's
you
okay.
sort of, you get it.
Yeah.
So that, and third one, I mean, it's obviously far from successful so far, and it's still far from complete. So always in motion, I guess. It's not a word, it's three, but always in motion.
I love motion. Mine is moment.
Yes, that would be
Well,
great.
listen, really appreciate reconnecting and on this platform. Your advice, I hope that somebody goes back to listen to this and take some notes, because there's lots of nuggets here, and we're going to have to go on unpack all the things that Sitash talked about. Please, we'll put all the links in the show notes for where you can find him and what Borderless does and Stockle does. It applies to you, because everybody who has some money to invest or diversify, there are many ways, particularly if you're outside the US, you have access to Stockholm. Sorry,
Thank you so
Borderless.
much.
So thank you, Sitashwa, for being here. And in that same vein, I always ask the question: is there anything in this last 45 minutes that perhaps you might have discovered?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Raju. Thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure. Things that I've discovered, I didn't think I could give advice. I would never come to myself for advice in general. But, I think what I ended up saying regarding becoming an entrepreneur, I think that's, if I think back, I think that makes sense. So yeah, again, it's not advice at all. It's just experience.
Well, whatever it is you discovered about yourself or other things, I have no idea. Just it's an open question. So
Yes.
great. Well, again, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
can't wait to see the progression of your journey, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Raju. Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Have a good day.
Thank you, my friend, for tuning in to another episode of Bold Conscious Connections. If you really enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up, please, and subscribe for more inspiring stories and insights from top entrepreneurs and leaders. So that button is right below here. And also hit the notification bell, that thing next to subscribe, so you'll never miss another episode and any of our latest content that I post, usually every week. I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions, so drop them in the comments below. I would really love to hear more about what I'm doing and maybe bring you something that's more suitable for what you like and other things that you might want to learn about. So join our vibrant community of individuals who are out there making a difference. Okay? Stay tuned for more amazing conversation that will inspire and empower you. And until next time, remember, live boldly and consciously, my friend.